Discover the amazing secrets of ancient Egypt, 7 inspiring gods, pharaohs, and legends revealed. Emily had always found solace among books, listening to the gentle whispers of pages turning as she wandered the aisles of her small-town library. It felt safe, predictable, a comforting cocoon. She reveled in sorting through the stacks, but today the rain fell in heavy sheets against the window, drowning her thoughts deeper in monotony. Then, while rummaging through a dusty archive, her fingers brushed against something smooth and cold, pulling her out of her routine. An amulet, unlike anything she'd ever seen, sparkled with a strange, alluring energy. Her heart raced as she turned it over, the ancient hieroglyphs imbuing her mind with memories of her grandfather's vibrant tales of Egyptian gods and pharaohs. Yet excitement quickly morphed into a churning dread. Did she dare pursue the thrill of delving into its secrets? A child of modest ambition, Emily remained ensnared in the web of her responsibilities. Her father's medical bills loomed over their home like dark storm clouds. Each dollar towards history felt like a direct blow to her family's stability. "Emily, are you wasting your time with that nonsense?" Her mother's voice echoed in her mind, filled with skepticism about her daughter's obsession. But how could she dismiss the amulet? It held a profound promise, a connection to the past that lit a fire within her chest. Yet the pressure of her family's financial crisis dimmed her resolve, squeezing the unfamiliar joy of discovery into a tight box of guilt and fear. She was torn between pursuing the legacy of knowledge that inspired her grandfather and the heavy chains of familial duty. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now, let's continue. The internal conflict over the amulet deepened when she shared her find with Daniel, a local professor who understood her passion. Days turned into nights as they debated, researched, and navigated a sea of ancient texts, each new clue reinforcing a bond that strained against the weight of their realities. For Daniel, there was a fear of stepping beyond barriers built by racial prejudice. Would pursuing this lead put him in danger of haunting whispers from the past? Emily felt empathy turn into anguish. She saw the unease in his eyes mirrored her own. With every discovery, shadows spread over her heart, whispering that the amulet's fate was connected to her grandfather's hidden legacy. Would revealing its power betray the family she longed to protect? The conflict spiraled into a myriad of responsibilities and promises, illuminating the insidious pull between her ambitions and family obligations. As the corporation linked to their findings loomed like a dark thundercloud, Emily felt the crushing weight of their impending threat. Each potential solution illuminated her fears, leaving her breathless. Would she dare sacrifice the past for her family's future? Or would she forsake their needs by preserving a shared heritage meant for more than profit? She quivered with desire for exploration, but felt she might drown in the chaos of choices. Just like her grandfather, she stood at a crossroads, navigating tides of history and legacy beneath the storm's fray, her future a tapestry of potential outcomes that spun her head. Each breath pressed heavier against her chest as she faced the precipice of a decision that could not only reshape her life, but the legacy of those who came before her. The tension was palpable, and as she reached for clarity, she sensed yet another revelation delicately unfurling, a whisper in her heart urging her to embrace the journey. What truth would she uncover next, and at what cost? With the rain pounding relentlessly against the library windows, Emily clutched the amulet tightly in her palm, feeling its coolness contrasting with the warmth of her racing heart. The ancient object had been the catalyst that awakened her ambitions, yet every spark of curiosity ignited only more doubt. She had always been a caretaker at heart, accustomed to placing her dreams behind the urgent needs of her family. As days turned into a rhythm of research and self-doubt, Emily found it increasingly difficult to balance her growing resolve with the nagging reminder of her family's burdens. Daniel saw the potential in her eyes, a flicker of bravery that could ignite change, but he too struggled, the weight of expectations shaping his choices. What would happen if they dared to step beyond societal confines and challenge the narratives handed down to them? Amidst the stacks of books and hushed whispers of the library, Emily began to monopolize her thoughts on the amulet. Each hieroglyph felt like a doorway to another world, but its significance loomed large over her as if testing her readiness to embrace change. She spent hours deciphering the ancient symbols with Daniel's guidance, glued to manuscripts that seemed to thrum with whispers of a centuries-old lineage. The more she learned, the more she felt an ancestral pull. It bred an insatiable desire to unearth what lay hidden, even as it deepened the conflict within her.
One afternoon, as the sun dipped behind dark clouds, Emily clicked away at her laptop, investigating the corporation interested in the findings of her research. Their intentions felt insidious, laced with greed that threatened to exploit her family's history.
Would pursuing deeper knowledge benefit them, or would it validate a legacy meant only for profit? She felt the suffocating grip of choice, her moral compass spinning as she questioned whether to unveil the truth or protect her father's fragile health from further financial despair. The thought of confronting the corporation sent shivers down her spine. What if she became an accomplice to exploitation? Yet the allure of revealing untold stories of her heritage beckoned her, an uncharted territory waiting for her stamp of approval. The conflict tore away pieces of her identity. If she revealed the amulet's secrets, would that make her a guardian of history or a traitor to the ones she loved? As a gust of wind rattled the library's windows, she locked eyes with Daniel, who was immersed in his own thoughts. What if we shared our findings with the right people, those who could appreciate its value beyond monetary gain? He proposed, his voice low but urgent. A glimmer of hope was evident in his eyes, yet a crack of uncertainty shadowed it. Emily felt torn between the excitement of partnership and the dread of entangling her destiny with the uncertain outcome of their pursuit. Her heart clenched as an unfamiliar realization surfaced within. Perhaps the strength she sought was already hers. Was she capable of mapping a path that honored her family while venturing into the unknown? As she considered the possibilities, a flicker of resolve began to kindle, a whisper urging her to redefine her role. But before she could fully embrace this evolution, the sharpness of reality intruded once again. A notification flashed on her screen. The corporation had officially reached out, demanding a meeting to discuss their findings. The tension was palpable. This was the moment that would test who she truly was. Would she confront the looming threat and present her work, or would the fear of losing everything hold her back? The time had come to face the consequences of her choices, and the stakes had never been higher. As she took a deep breath, preparing for the meeting, her heart raced with anticipation and dread, knowing that every decision could unravel the delicate tapestry of her future. What awaited her in the larger world, and would she be ready to embrace it? Emily sat at her cluttered desk, the glow of her laptop illuminating her face as her mind swirled with apprehension. The upcoming meeting felt like a precipice, and she hungered for clarity. The weight of choice pressed heavily on her shoulders. Any decision she made could alter not only her trajectory, but also impact her family's fragile stability. The truth about the amulet felt vibrant and powerful, a link to the past that she had barely begun to understand. What if she could share this knowledge without it being twisted to serve greed? Her instincts battled against the clock as she sat amidst stacks of books and yellowing pages, each telling stories she yearned to honor.
Narratives of power and exploitation echoed through her thoughts, reminding her of the countless ways history had been manipulated for self-gain. The corporation's sleek facade disguised ravenous ambition. Would sharing her findings contribute to the cycle of exploitation, or could she rewrite her family's story, providing it a voice beyond the clutches of corporate greed? As the days rolled on, she pushed through endless research, but couldn't shake the feeling of being ensnared. Daniel's words lingered in her mind, urging her to seek allies who understood the deeper significance of the amulet. A slow, simmering determination began to rise, nudging her away from the shadows of fear and into the light that promised possibility. If only she could find the right path forward. In preparation for the meeting, Emily developed a plan. The notes scattered around her were no longer fragmented thoughts. They transformed into pieces of a greater puzzle. She painstakingly organized her findings, crafting a narrative that honored her heritage instead of exploiting it. Each revelation she planned to present was a step toward taking ownership of her ambitions, rather than surrendering them. The day of the meeting arrived, the storm that raged outside mirroring her internal tempest. As she walked through the entrance of the corporation's sleek high-rise, her heart was a battleground of anxiety and resolve. She smoothed down her blouse, a symbolic gesture to signify her transition from uncertainty to purpose. The room where the meeting would take place was stark and sterile, a jarring contrast to the warmth of her library sanctuary. A large table dominated the space, and at its head sat the representatives of the corporation, sharp suits, insincere smiles. They exuded confidence, a confidence she found daunting yet strangely motivating. As she laid out the findings,
Each word felt loaded with implications. For once, she was no longer merely a caretaker of her family's legacy, but an active shaper of its future. She watched their expressions transform from casual interest to calculated consideration. They sensed the weight of what she held in her hands. But as she spoke, Emily noticed a flicker of greed emerge in their eyes, a subtle shift that sent a chill of apprehension racing down her spine. Would they appreciate the amulet's worth as something beyond profit, or would they seek to exploit her discovery, stripping it of its cultural significance? The realization flooded her with a sense of urgency. This moment demanded courage. She could not afford to shy away now. Emily had to make a choice that aligned with her values. If she revealed the entire truth, allowing all her findings to unfold, would she dismantle the allure of profit and restore respect to her heritage? In that poignant moment, she felt the stirrings of her identity shift, morphing from a silent observer to a fierce advocate. Determination coursed through her veins like a warrior's battle cry.
And then, amidst the tension, a question bubbled to the surface. Was she ready to own the narrative surrounding not just the amulet, but also her place in this complex world? A pen hovered over her notes. As silence settled in the room, the stakes crystallized before her. The impending grip of exploitation loomed larger than ever. Emily took a steady breath, preparing to reveal not just her research, but the very heart of her evolution. What would she choose when the moment of truth arrived? Emily's heart raced as she faced the watching eyes of the corporate representatives. The once sterile room now felt charged, vibrating with an energy that demanded resolution. She could sense the first traces of doubt creeping in, threatening to unravel the confidence she had painstakingly built. Taking a breath, she anchored herself in the purpose behind her research. The amulet wasn't just an artifact. It resonated with stories of resilience and history, her history. It held the power to connect generations and teach lessons long forgotten. But how could she balance this profound responsibility with the reality of corporate greed? In that moment, she made her decision. She would not simply hand over her findings, would not allow them to be misused. It was not just about the amulet. It was about claiming her narrative and ensuring that it did not live under the shadow of exploitation. Before we proceed with the supposed value of this amulet in financial terms, she began, her voice steadier than she felt. I want to share its history. This is not just a relic. It is an integral part of my family's legacy. As she spoke, she felt the heat rising in the room, an intoxication derived from the charged atmosphere prevailing between her feelings of fear and the intoxicating hope that surged within her. As she detailed the origins and significance of the amulet, her confidence began to flourish. Each carefully chosen word was like an armor, shielding the sacred narrative from the greedy grasp surrounding her. The representatives exchanged glances that revealed their initial intrigue melting into frustration. Their expectations shifted as they realized they may not possess the upper hand. She could see their expressions hardening. They weren't accustomed to being denied. Instead of faltering, Emily pressed on. This amulet embodies the strength of my ancestors, reflects their struggles, and contains valuable teachings. If valued correctly, it should inspire and educate, not be commodified. A wave of realization washed over her. With each sentence, she shifted from wanting to be defensively persuasive to actively reclaiming her space in the conversation. But doubt growled from the edges of her resolve. How far could she push back against them? These representatives of corporate interests eager for exploitation? Could she maintain her stance in the face of inevitable pressure? In that split second, Emily visualized her family standing behind her, their eyes filled with pride, and she felt a surge of strength. Suddenly, she saw the subtle transformation in one representative's face, a flicker of respect, perhaps recognition that she was not just a frightened researcher, but a determined guardian of her heritage. Encouraged, she continued to elevate the importance of morality over profit. This narrative is not something to be stripped, but a story to be told. I am not seeking riches. I am seeking respect. The silence that followed felt suspended, heavy with choices yet to be made. Emily sensed a pivotal moment swirling in the air. She had taken a stand, but at what cost? She pondered the stakes of her decision. Walking out with her integrity intact was one victory, but would they respond with hostility or understanding? The dynamic in the room shifted from confrontation to contemplation, their greed momentarily at bay, but lurking tension remained unaddressed. When the meeting finally ended, Emily held her head high,
a small victory ignited in her heart. Yet the battle was far from over. As she stepped out into the stormy afternoon, doubt returned with the same ferocity as the raging storm. Was this just the beginning, perhaps of a greater conflict she hadn't anticipated? A feeling rippled through her, a strange combination of apprehension and anticipation. She could sense that the corporation would not let this slide easily. They would regroup. She would need a strategy, new allies to bolster her cause. And as she walked into the rain, determination mixed with a tinge of anxiety. Was she truly ready for the inevitable backlash? The time had come to face what awaited her as she prepared to deepen her commitment to not only her family's legacy, but also herself. What unforeseen challenges stirred just beyond the horizon, ready to confront her? The rain drummed against the pavement, each drop a sharp reminder of the emotional torrent swirling within Emily. She wrapped her arms around herself as she navigated the slick streets, her mind racing through different strategies. Each step felt monumental. A small victory had been achieved, but she was acutely aware of the looming shadows of opposition, ready to pounce on any perceived weakness. That night, she pored over her research notes and compiled her data into a comprehensive package, scrutinizing every section. Although exhausted, she felt a surge of adrenaline every time she revisited the significance of the amulet. It wasn't just an object, it was a vessel of legacy, rich with stories and meanings that extended far beyond financial valuation. But how could she elevate those stories into a tangible strategy against corporate encroachment? Her laptop hummed softly, glowing like a beacon in the dimly lit room, beckoning her to further explore her options. Emily hesitated, glancing at her phone. The corporate representatives had promised to reach out soon.
She could sense their frustration, their possessive curiosity. Was it possible they might turn abrasive? She needed to be prepared for every scenario. Suddenly, an idea sparked within her. What if she could assemble an exhibition that showcased the amulet's historical significance? Not merely a display of relics for profit, but a platform for storytelling that could loop in academic institutions, museums, and possibly other scholars interested in indigenous narratives. With each thought, her excitement grew. This was more than salvage. It was proactive reclamation. She began to sketch the framework for what she would call Legacy Unveiled, the amulet's journey. What if she could gather stories from her family and peers, perhaps even invite others in her community to share their connections to similar artifacts? This could morph from a personal mission into a broader cultural movement, positioning herself as an advocate for respect over exploitation. As the evening wore on, Emily's enthusiasm fueled her research further. With each revelation she stumbled upon, the notion of leveraging technology for virtual exhibitions struck her as particularly potent. Digital platforms could share the stories behind artifacts globally, allowing others to contribute voices and experiences that had long been silenced. Slowly, a network of understanding began to weave itself between academia and community. The phone rang, jolting her from her vision. The persistent tone shattered the atmosphere of calm she had constructed. She answered, heart pounding. It was one of the corporate representatives. Emily, thank you for your insights earlier today. We appreciate your passion, but wish to discuss the future of the amulet's value in our profit projections. We believe it could yield extraordinary benefits. Their tone was polished, but tinged with an edge she recognized. The words rolled off the tongue smooth, but the layers of implication suffocated any hint of sincerity. I appreciate your interest, she replied, carefully choosing her words, but I'm more focused now on how its value can resonate beyond just financial gain. A bold stance, the voice replied, a note of challenge lacing through the professionalism. We're prepared to make a substantial offer, but I'd advise reconsidering your position before we meet again. The disconnect of their motives was glaring. As she hung up, a wave of resolve settled over her. The battle was not merely about the amulet. It was a clash of values. This was her moment to pivot, not just for her family, but for herself. The time for mere defense had passed. It was time to construct a narrative powerful enough to confront corporate greed head-on. Emily glanced at her hastily grouped notes and the vision board slowly coming together. Where she once felt uncertain, she now saw the path forming. But she knew the stakes were rising, and with the representatives lurking in the background, the conflict was far from over.
What would happen when she finally confronted them with her newfound strategy? Would they be ready to negotiate or prepared to battle? The tension spiraled in her mind, invigorating and terrifying as the impending confrontation loomed closer. Emily awoke the next morning, the weight of her decision pressing down. The morning light streamed through the window, illuminating the scattered notes and sketches that bore testament to her determination. She had ventured too far into uncharted territory to turn back now. The idea of legacy unveiled had galvanized her purpose, igniting a spark that she had long buried under layers of doubt. She began her day with the urgency of a soldier preparing for battle, refining her plan while boxing up her insecurities. Each detail, from the layout of the virtual exhibition to the promotional language she would use, was meticulously crafted. She envisioned using engaging video clips, personal narratives, and interactive features that would immerse people in the heritage and spiritual significance of the amulet. As she transitioned from planning to execution mode, the underlying fear that gripped her from the corporate representative's words began to morph. It was no longer a sense of dread, but rather a fierce resolve. She needed to secure allies in this venture, scholars, storytellers, and even artists who could lend their voices to the narrative she was attempting to weave. Emily spent hours drafting emails, reaching out to local universities and cultural organizations. The responses were lukewarm at best, but that only fueled her resolve. She understood the essence of her mission now. It was not merely about preserving the past, but kindling awareness in the present. She formulated questions that could intrigue potential collaborators. What stories did they have tied to similar artifacts? How could they construct a collective history that transcends mere academic expression? Each inquiry was a step toward bridging the gap that corporations sought to widen. As her network began to grow, Emily engaged in discussions that were both inspiring and challenging. Some scholars were initially skeptical. They questioned the feasibility of a virtual exhibition, but she countered their reservations with questions of her own. What was history, if not a living dialogue? Could they afford to remain silent when voices demanded to be heard? The phone rang just as the day morphed into a blur of ideas and drives. She answered, anticipating another business center query, but it was a mentor from her past, a professor who had once instilled in her a love for cultural studies. "Emily, it's been a while. I heard about your work with the amulet. Fascinating approach. How's it going?" She hesitated, then poured out her vision, the doubts melting away in the face of genuine interest. Her professor's excitement mirrored her own, and suddenly it felt real. They delved deeper into topics of funding, promotion, and academic support.
She outlined her vision for the exhibition, detailing narrative arcs that would delve into identity, loss, and rediscovery. "That's compelling," her professor said, the enthusiasm dancing in their voice. "Have you considered applying for grants to support this? Institutions often look for innovative cultural projects." Grants, a concept she hadn't thoroughly considered before. It felt like a lifeline thrown to her amidst turbulent waters. The urgency to pursue this avenue ignited a rush of motivation, a way to solidify her foundation against corporate pressure. As she hung up, the pieces began to align. Emily realized that she was not just an underdog in this battle. She was a pioneer, ready to reclaim and redefine the narrative. The stakes felt monumental, but for the first time she felt the exhilarating thrill of possibility. However, none of the excitement dulled the incoming confrontation with the corporate representatives. With every email she sent, every connection she nurtured, the feeling of impending collision grew. Would the corporate machine be as formidable as she anticipated, or could her initiative unravel their plans? The clock ticked, and Emily prepared for that inevitable meeting, aware that each moment of growth was backed by the weight of her foray into history and cultural identity. Her confidence surged. Was she ready for this battle? The possibilities flickered in her mind as the rain began to fall again, mirroring the storm of anticipation building within her. All of the groundwork would soon culminate in a confrontation, or was it an opportunity? Doubt lingered in the air like a thick fog. The game was changing. As she gathered her notes one last time, she faced a silent promise to herself. What now awaited her on the other side of that meeting? Would this be her defining moment, or would it unravel her aspirations? The answer was looming, just beyond the horizon. Her day began with solitude as rain continued to drizzle outside, echoing her anxious thoughts. She grabbed her favorite mug, filled with hot coffee, and embraced the comforting routine. In these moments, she would often find clarity. Today was different. She found herself enveloped in a wave of purpose instead. The journey of the amulet was a voyage not just into history, but also an exploration of identity intertwined with cultural narratives. In her mind, she reviewed her narrative structure, layers of personal accounts woven into historical context. What if the amulet embodied stories of resilience and connectivity? What would happen if she involved the community in creating digital content? It struck her. This wasn't just about her discovery. It was about the power of many voices breathing life into history. Striking significance felt like both a burden and a gift. But amidst this creativity, shadows of doubt occasionally slipped in. Were the corporate representatives genuinely invested in authenticity, or would they tarnish the vision she had painstakingly crafted? Thoughts swirled in her mind. The excitement that once accompanied the idea of collaboration now tangentially edged towards paranoia. She needed to find a grounding principle, a clear belief to cling onto amidst external noise. As she continued to prepare, Emily revisited the conversation she had with her professor about funding. Grant applications loomed like a daunting specter, but were also brimming with potential. Each application would demand her to articulate her vision succinctly and powerfully. It was an art she had yet to master, but felt energized to tackle. The idea of writing proposals felt like crafting a narrative untethered from commercial constraints. With renewed vigor, she set about outlining her grant applications. Each entry was a chance to articulate her vision, to align funding with storytelling, to create a tapestry that elevated the artifact beyond its physical state. Each paragraph felt like a step towards dismantling the barriers built by corporate indifference. Characters, stories, emotions, each aspect of her application required authenticity infused with urgency. Hours slipped by as she entered a state of flow, her fingers a blur over the keyboard. She had crafted not just applications, but manifestos of belief. "What is history," she wrote, "if it does not remind us of our shared humanity?" As she leaned back in her chair, exhaustion mingling with exhilaration, a thought pinched her neatly organized thoughts. What would the meeting even look like? Would they dismiss her work outright, or could she hold her ground firmly enough to convey the depths of her commitment? The tremor of uncertainty rippled through her, but she quashed it, firming her resolve. It was late evening when she closed her laptop, her mind racing with the myriad possibilities. Tomorrow she would stand at the intersection of her past uncertainty and her burgeoning confidence.
As the rain finally subsided, revealing a glimmer of evening light, Emily felt sure of one thing. When she walked into that conference room, she would not be backing down. Her phone buzzed with a notification. It was a reply from a potential collaborator. The message contained intriguing ideas and a willingness to be involved. A giddy rush of anticipation shot through her, but then her stomach twisted at the realization. Each new development added layers of complexity to her already daunting task. Would this meeting lead to an opportunity for her vision, or would it unravel everything she had painstakingly built? As she stared at her reflection in the screen, the line between fear and opportunity became indistinguishable, and an unsettling thrill bubbled to the surface. With each new moment, Emily questioned her fears, but sensed that her journey forward was just beginning. What awaited her on the other side of that meeting was both a culmination of growth and the edge of unsettling possibilities. Little did she know, chaos was preparing to erupt. Emily awoke to sunlight streaming through her window, dispelling the remnants of last night's anxieties. She had set multiple alarms, her mind driven like a pulsating drum, reminding her that today was pivotal. As she dressed, her thoughts shifted back and forth, slicing through doubt with every crisp button she secured on her blouse. The meeting was less than 5 hours away. In the kitchen, the aroma of freshly brewed coffee filled her senses. She sipped slowly, allowing the warmth to seep into her bones, while mentally rehearsing her presentation. This wasn't just about data points and timelines. It was a living narrative she needed to breathe into being. It was her chance to bridge the gap between her passion for history and the world's need for authentic storytelling. Would they see that? Could she convince them to join her on this journey? The drive to the corporate office felt longer than usual. Each red light was a reminder of the time ticking away. She glanced at the reflection in her side mirror, affirming her resolve. The nervousness was still there, but now it mingled with a fierce determination. She reminded herself, "This is my vision. It matters." As she entered the lobby, Emily felt the weight of the building's polished opulence. The sleek modern lines bore a stark contrast to her own humble beginnings.
She recalled her small college classroom, brimming with youthful enthusiasm and innovation, where she first developed her ideas about the amulet. Those days felt distant, yet infused within her, lending conviction to her stance. The meeting room was grand, a long table adorned with glossy materials, sleek laptops, and a projector looming overhead. She took her seat, noting the corporate representatives as they filed in, each one dressed for success, their expressions guarded. As the conversation progressed, Emily sensed their skepticism, a palpable wall raised against her ideals.
She introduced her proposal passionately, blending facts with her compelling narrative. Yet as she spoke, she encountered the perspective of one particular representative who leaned back in his chair, arms crossed, challenging her every claim. His eyes bored deep into her confidence, testing the very foundation of her convictions. "Isn't this just another marketing ploy disguised as culture? What's to stop this from becoming another commodified product?" he asked, his tone laced with disdain. Each word felt like ice water splashed across her fervent flow. Suddenly, the room narrowed, focusing only on him and her. The challenge was no longer just to convince them of her research. It had morphed into a confrontation of her integrity. "History isn't meant to be commodified," she asserted, her voice steadier than she felt inside. "It's a reflection of humanity's collective spirit and all its narratives, not just a drive to sales." As the words left her lips, a ripple of unease twisted in her stomach. Would this clear stand earn their respect or condemn her? The room seemed to hold its breath along with her. After a long silence that felt like hours, a whisper of approval from a colleague eased the tension like a momentary balm. The representative's expression shifted, but Emily knew that would not be the end of their scrutiny. They were intensely evaluating her not just for her project, but for her capacity to challenge their preconceptions. As discussions continued, Emily deftly navigated questions, embracing doubts and refining her responses. Gradually, the atmosphere began to change, but captivating exchange emerged from her genuine engagement. Every response became more than just a defense of her ideas. It transformed into a dialogue about identity, storytelling, and the layers of meaning embedded in history. By the end of the meeting, the representatives offered to consider her proposal for further discussion, but the interactions had left her dizzy, filled with equal parts triumph and uncertainty. She stepped out into the fresh air, her heart racing. Yet beneath the exhilaration, uncertainty gnawed at her, a sensation of not having fully landed her point. Did they truly understand the essence of her vision? The lingering voice in her head reminded her of the theme of authenticity she held so dear. As she made her way home, she reflected on the meeting, noting the nuances of interactions and the unexpected reactions. Each insight felt like a door slightly ajar, inviting her to explore further, but also to face the next challenge, the next opportunity to stand firm in her message amidst a sea of skepticism. What awaited her now was more than a simple follow-up. It was a call to strengthen her narrative, to refine her identity as both a historian and a storyteller. But could she gather the courage to face the rising tides of corporate culture without compromising her vision? The journey ahead was clouded with doubts, but charged with possibility. And as the sun dipped below the horizon, Emily's phone buzzed with another notification, a new message from the potential collaborator she had connected with earlier. But this time, the words hinted at trouble brewing, an unexpected challenge that could either fortify her resolve or threaten to unravel everything she had worked for. Emily plopped down on the couch, the exhaustion from the meeting settling in like a lead weight. She picked up her phone, scanning the terse message again. "We need to rethink the collaboration. There are concerns about authenticity." The words echoed in her mind, each syllable amplifying her doubt. She had fought so hard for her vision, had stood strong in the face of scrutiny, only to find uncertainty creeping back in, not just from others, but from within herself. Her passion for history had always felt like a haven, a refuge to channel her creativity and intellect. Yet lately, the demand to conform to expectations had blurred her understanding of that passion. The line between authenticity and commercial viability seemed to stretch infinitely, creating a chasm she couldn't quite navigate. The ache of disappointment gripped her stomach. Would she have to compromise her ideals to gain acceptance in this world? Determined not to spiral further into despair, Emily reached for a notebook and began jotting down her thoughts.
Each line she wrote felt like a breath of fresh air, a reminder that she still had agency over her narrative. "Identify my core values," she penned at the top. She needed to clarify what mattered most in her mission, a compass to guide her in this unpredictable terrain. Flipping back through her notes from the meeting, she relished some of the flickers of connection she had felt. She highlighted phrases and ideas that had garnered positive responses, tracing her thoughts with a blue pen like an artist sketching the outline of a masterpiece. Each notable exchange ignited a small flame of hope within her. The evening morphed into an intense brainstorming session. Emily visualized herself as an ancient storyteller, weaving tales of deities and pharaohs, their lessons compounding through time. She began constructing a fresh framework for her proposal, one that fused both her passion and the practical interests of her potential collaborators. What if she could create an engaging narrative around historical figures, merging facts with immersive storytelling that appealed to a broader audience? As her ideas flowed, she noticed her heartbeat quickened with purpose. The realization struck: she could still deliver on authenticity without losing her voice. This realization lit a fire within her, the confidence that she could reclaim her personal narrative while aligning with the corporate world's expectations. But was this strategy merely spinning her truth to fit their framework? A second wave of self-doubt crashed over her, and she leaned back on the couch, overwhelmed.
She couldn't ignore her original mission: to spark genuine interest in history, to foster a connection with the past that wasn't diluted by profit margins. Pushing the thoughts aside, Emily resolved to take action. She would reach out to her collaborator, but not with an apology or concession. She'd ask for a discourse, an open dialogue built on mutual respect for their differing perspectives. She felt a wave of determination rising with each word she composed in her upcoming email. It wasn't about seeking permission to be authentic, but rather asserting her right to define what that authenticity looked like in a commercial context. As she prepared the send button for her email, a thought infiltrated her mind. Could this confrontation become an opportunity for synergy instead of opposition? By merging her distinct vision with their objectives, they might carve a path that retained her integrity while enhancing their commercial strategy. With her finger hovering over the screen, a new message buzzed in. It was a notification for an online seminar titled "Harnessing Authentic Storytelling in the Digital Age." Something within her ignited. Maybe this would be another tool in her arsenal, a chance to develop her skills further and gather ideas to solidify her own authenticity. The stirring excitement blurred the edges of her earlier doubts, replacing apprehension with possibility. Emily pressed send on her email, taking a deep breath as she envisioned expanding her horizons beyond mere survival in corporate culture. The challenge was ripe with potential, and her next steps could either solidify her vision or potentially scatter it. Could she navigate the intricate balance between the demands of the corporate world and her unwavering commitment to genuine storytelling? The next chapter of her journey awaited just beyond the horizon, shrouded in ambiguity, yet illuminated with opportunity. Emily stood atop a hill that overlooked her town, the sun setting into the horizon, casting warm hues that blended into the evening sky. The challenges she had faced in the past weeks, the corporate pitch, the shifts in alliances, the nagging doubts, had culminated in one undeniable fact: she had transformed. Standing here, she felt an exhilarating sense of solid confidence. Weeks had passed since the tumultuous meeting with the corporate representatives. Through relentless dedication, Emily had redefined her mission into a compelling exploration of authentic storytelling, particularly around her beloved amulet's historical significance. The virtual exhibition, Legacy Unveiled, had morphed from an uncertain idea into a complete narrative infused with the voices of her family and community, open for collaborations with institutions and scholars eager to participate. She remembered her professor's words: "History thrives on dialogue," and took that to heart.
With each collaboration established, she affirmed her competence not just as a historian, but as an advocate for her family's legacy. Excitement flowed through her as she thought of plans for interactive sessions, cultural exchanges, and community storytelling events that would transcend mere historical recounting. She had turned her passion into a thriving expression of shared heritage. Moreover, Emily's proposal had caught attention beyond her local sphere. A prestigious cultural foundation had expressed interest in partnering with her for funding, eager to support exhibits that honored authenticity. That validation felt exhilarating. Her dream was materializing, recognized not just by those who once doubted her, but by those who celebrated her vision.
This transformation was not just external, but deeply personal. The pressure that had once weighed on her shoulders transformed into recognition of her capabilities. As she fought through her internal conflicts, she found clarity and direction, a fierce independence that emerged from repeated decisions to stand firm against exploitation and commodification. She leaned into her history, transformed restraints into conduits of growth, proving that connection to heritage could indeed break the barriers of corporate interest. With every collaborative effort, Emily cultivated relationships based on respect, insight, and mutual aspirations. Her journey became a roadmap for others. She encouraged peers to share their own cultural narratives, each story respected and integrated into their shared exploration of history's value. The exhibition blossomed into a communal effort, fusing identities across generations and histories, making the past relevant for a new audience. She turned to the view before her. The familiar landscape now shimmered with promise, not just for her ambition, but for a legacy that would inspire those who followed. Emily grinned, realizing she had built something that went beyond her family's narrative. She had crafted a movement, an ongoing conversation about identity, history, and authenticity. The wind blew gently against her cheek as she felt the weight of satisfaction envelop her. She had accomplished something significant. She forged a professional path that could withstand scrutiny, and embraced her role unapologetically. Gone were the days when guilt over family obligations held her back. She had integrated them into her journey rather than shunned them. With her heart full, Emily took a deep breath, a sense of peace washing over her. She had proven to herself that dreams, when grounded in passion and purpose, could lead not only to personal fulfillment, but inspire others as well. Determinedly, she set her eyes forward, embracing the next chapter of her life not as an uncertain individual lost in her aspirations, but as a capable curator of her legacy. She was ready to take on the world, confident in the knowledge that she would shape her story and invite others along for the ride.
This was her moment, one she had built from the ground up. Now, if you're inspired by Emily's journey and crave more incredible stories of overcoming challenges, you need to subscribe now. This is the moment to show your support for authentic storytelling. Leave a like to help feed the algorithm and share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this empowering conclusion. Don't wait even one more second. Your engagement fuels the narratives we create. Comment below with your thoughts and theories. Let's celebrate transformation together.